doesn't look like that.
We'll do so.
Yeah. Like I've had savage people tell me about it. It makes me excited. Yeah.
This is what it's.
That's what I'm saying. That's perfect. Great idea coming from anybody. That whole family, that has to be great. I have no idea what that means.
There's everything else space to get into.
Right now, you don't have.
Get a bomb at 35. It was an old practice bomb. We shells we small war. Here are things we
Plus 40 then? That's what I think.
Here are things we take.
You mean like we're putting up new members?
Yeah.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
You know who they are? Awesome. Okay. Okay, great.
Some of that stuff.
Yeah. We're getting one or two today, you think? I guess we're voting on. Voting on.
And then there are definitely users on the part.
We got yours.
I got mine. Thank you. Yeah. Rudolph, we going chair here? No. Chair. Nominated chair.
Keep that nomination going however you wish. Somebody will have to close.
Does this have to be like, it has to be like a public thing? Like, can we not figure this out? Like,
It's supposed to be a public.
really? No. And I have like the shortest term, I think, of anyone. Like, I'm only like a year and a half left.
You can be re-upped.
Come on.
It's actually well, it's a.
No.
How are you? Doing well.
You got the most experience.
Yeah. Okay, that's great.
No.
You ever seen it?
I do not.
Yeah. But it wasn't. It could have been.
Perfect. Thanks, man. Thank you for doing that. You
That's great.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, great. I'm sorry I missed you. Perfect. Yeah.
I support it. I support it.
It was, I'm glad you met.
Go ahead. now called to order our April 13th, 2023 meeting. Now called to order. And our first order of business will be the election of officers for the Sports Authority Board. Do I have any volunteers to be the chair amongst that member? I guess that'll leave me, I guess.
I'd be happy to nominate you, Rudolph.
We'll do that.
Yeah, nomination for Rudolph.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, you're the chair. I'm the chair. Okay, next up is vice chair. Do I have any volunteers for that? I'll do it. I'll do the vice chair. Okay.
Second?
Okay.
Nominate.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, so Randy is the vice chair.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, and next is secretary.
I nominate Ann Weeks for secretary.
Yourself?
Reverend Ann Weeks.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And which is the secretary. So we got all that out the way. Next, is approval of our minutes for March 9th, 2023. Do I have a motion, to approve?
So moved. Second.
Approve. And next on our agenda is the update regarding the process for securing, architectural services. And do we have someone to present that? Thank you, Jermaine.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, members of the board. Jermaine Freeman, Economic Development from the city. And so we are in the process of releasing an RFQ for architects to serve as the architect of record for this project. That process is being overseen and led by our Public Works Department. And so I'll ask my colleague, Bill Payne, to talk a little bit more about that. And then what we'll also do today is to share an update for some of the renderings for what the stadium will look like on the site. We've had a little bit of shifts in terms of the stadium location. As you all know, over the past several weeks and months, we've been doing some geotechnical work, surveying, and some of the due diligence work that is required as part of a big construction project. And so in so doing, we have determined that the actual site location of the stadium needed to shift a little bit. And so I'll ask Jim Irwin, who is serving as master developer for the site and who works for Perimeter Properties, to come sort of share those slides in just a second. But Bill, do you want to say anything about the RFQ?
Good morning. Appreciate the opportunity to give you some information about the RFQ process that we're utilizing. The city of Chattanooga already has a blanket contract that we have issued, which has pre-qualified architects on it. There are 7 pre-qualified architects on that. And the process we're using for the ballpark is similar to a process that we've done on other projects, where we write up what the requirements would be for the project and for the specifically from the architects themselves, what services we need them to deliver. And we provide that information to all 7 of them. And we're asking for them to provide that information back to us. We anticipate getting responses back from interested firms. We've given them the schedule so that they understand what kind of timeline they would need to meet. We've asked them to provide back that information to us in the form of their packages on May 1st. And so we'll be getting that information and evaluating that through that process, and then working through to make a selection from there based on the individual responses from each of the architects. So that process could go straight to a recommendation for selection that we would then bring forward to you, or it may be an internal process that we may do some interviews with the shortlisted architects, depending on how close the evaluations are. But we'll work through that once we see what those packages look like on May 1st. But at this time, we still anticipate that we're on schedule, and we've provided that information to each of the architects so they understand what would be expected of them. Be happy to answer any questions if you have them.
I've got one. The architects that are on this master list, are they within the Chattanooga area or outside or both?
All of them have offices here. A couple of them do also have some larger offices outside of this specific area, but they all are local architects that do work regularly, both for Chattanooga, Hamilton County, as well as a lot of private work as well. So they're well known and well versed in our community.
Thank you.
Certainly.
Bill, as far as the siding, is there some change in the location on here? And is that being done by the surveyors, or how's that working?
We're working in conjunction with the folks at New City Properties, and so as with the lookouts as well as with perimeter properties to find that best location. That's the information that Jim Irwin is going to share momentarily on where that is. But all of that was based on what's the available distance and what are the elements on the site that were desired to remain, and how did those best fit in with the stadium siting. But I'll let Jim speak more to that.
And that will be confirmed by the surveyors that the city has on retainer as well.
Correct. We are selecting right now a surveyor for that. So we needed to know where the concept was first.
Yes.
And then now that we're in that process and ready to move forward to the next step, we'll be able to move ahead then with the actual meets and bounds boundary of the property that is to be donated over to the Sports Authority for the project.
Yes, sir. And that's important for the legal description on the donation.
Yes.
Okay.
No other questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Well, with that, if the board doesn't mind, I'll ask the master developer, Jim Irwin, to come up to present sort of the latest renderings and to kind of talk through where we are now in terms of the siding of the stadium. So, Mr. Irwin?
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm really honored to be here, and most importantly, just incredibly excited to give you this update. A lot has been going on behind the scenes to be at a position where we can provide this update for you. And I love the question that you asked, because a lot of the work that we've been doing is in service of facilitating that donation agreement, where the partners will ultimately donate the land. And so we've had to do a lot of work behind the scenes with the ballpark architect specialists, as well as the architects who specialize in the historic preservation components. And so I'm excited to kind of get into it, and please interrupt me with questions if that's helpful. Obviously, you're familiar with the site, and the first thing we did in terms of trying to orient the ballpark within the property is figure out how we can kind of create and connect all the already amazing parts of the infrastructure and the fabric of the neighborhood. So you've got the Riverwalk, obviously, that's coming through the area. And what we tried to do is create a situation where we can really celebrate the power of the Riverwalk, and not just have it be a thin trail that sort of skirts around the stadium, but how can we actually integrate the stadium and all of the infrastructure and make it a public amenity year round. That's really the ultimate goal. This is not just about baseball. This is about creating an asset for the entire city. And so that this is sort of a sketch to kind of illustrate what we mean by that. And then in addition to making this a place that you can bike and jog and run and walk to a game or to a concert, obviously we've also thought about sort of vehicular ingress, egress. How do you get 2,500, 2,600 cars, quickly in and out, that don't sort of, interrupt the rest of the neighborhood and the district. So really this slide, it seems like kind of a jumbled mess, but when I saw this slide for the first time, when we worked with our master planners, this to me is like when the clouds parted and the beam shone down, and I knew that this was going to be a great project, because we came up with this sort of ring road concept that sort of builds on the existing infrastructure, the existing transportation network in the immediate area. And how do you quickly service a ballpark? How do you also sort of get access to and really unlock the developable parts of the property in a way that's organized, in a way that's thoughtful. And also, if you see the sort of yellow and orange lines running through the middle that also really venerate the pedestrian, venerate the walker, venerate green space, and really celebrate and encourage that type of commuting. And that this all sort of organizes it in a really important way. So when we took that and we sort of fleshed it out further, what you're seeing here, all the pink buildings are the existing structures that are sort of in the area. And when we sort of, the exercise with master planning is you're basically taking major league standards, which include distance requirements, the field dimensions, sight lines, and in the previous location, we basically would have had to take down major portions of some of the most special buildings in the project. And we're also looking at access, parking, which we can talk about in a second, and basically all those things. And it would have had to pretty significantly compromise this idea with the Riverwalk connectivity. So ultimately, this location in the site made the most sense when we sort of layered all those things together. And one of the most exciting things about this is the two buildings that will really be incorporated into the stadium. Include one building that the partners have called for many years the Pattern Shop, which will actually have fan seating inside the bones of this beautiful historic structure. And also the Powerhouse, which is sort of in the corner of right field. And that's a building that originally supplied all the generation of power for the entire property. But now we can actually turn that into kind of terraced berm seating, and also some, really that will become like the front door of the whole project. So it really, again, it's like, it's hard to describe, unless you sort of do what I do for a living. It's hard to describe how good this is, but it's like it really is dialed in an exciting way. The other thing that this early work has allowed us to do is generate the RFQ that Bill mentioned a few minutes ago. So now that we actually have a clear concept for moving forward, this is what we've been able to basically hand, or distribute in the RFQ, so that the architects can actually see what their work would entail. And Reverend, one thing that I love your question about local architects. One thing that is really important and a very specific strategy of ours is that by using these specialists early on, our goal is that the vast majority of the work and the proceeds that will go to spend on architectural dollars will go directly into the Chattanooga community. That's a very explicit goal, that it not go to national architects elsewhere, but it, the vast majority of this basically gets recycled back into the community. I'm trying to think of anything else I can tell you. The hatched line here, this is where we've needed to get in order to create the meets and bounds surveys. And so we're now sort of in the next couple of weeks going to be, we sort of have the final location. Now we're going to be really kind of dialing it down into the inches so that our surveyors can get to work creating the meets and bounds and all the things that are necessary to complete that donation agreement. Yeah, so the stadium, if you look to the left of the page, where that sort of white box is, that's where it would, that's the previous location that we thought might work. But in the Foundry building, as you see sort of that long rectilinear building with the long lines, that's the previous location. But you can see when we really got into the weeds and loaded in those requirements for field measurements and distances, and making it not just about baseball, but also for concerts, loading, soccer, et cetera. This this ultimately made the most sense. And one thing that's really exciting about this is if you're sitting in the outfield, if you can imagine looking south, and of course, it needs to be said too that the sight lines, like this is exactly dialed in so that the sun won't be in batter's eyes and all the things that are concerned about the existing facility. But if you're sitting in the outfield looking south towards the first base line, you'll be looking at fans and again, there's two beautiful structures. You'll see the other structures behind it, and then the lookout mountains will be in the distance with the sun setting over it. So it's a pretty dramatic setting. Another thing that's interesting, and I think if you think about kind of the view from 24 right now, what we'll have here, facing the highway is a new construction. So the building in the right field or in the third base line is new construction, and that we intend to build, a really dramatic kind of front door welcome to Chattanooga. And you think of like signage and art going on the back of that building facing the highway, it will be a pretty dramatic improvement in the situation now. So there's just a lot of really amazing pros about the siting. I threw in here a photo of the existing pattern shop. This is a photo I took with my phone a few days ago. And this is where some of that fan seating would be, but we would preserve all the steel truss structures, and then actually turn some of those old shop windows, those steel windows on the left, into doors where there would be sort of indoor outdoor seating for fans. It's a 2-floor building. The lower floors, we believe that kind of a open food hall with several different options, both for games, but also think of things that could be open year round, where you have the Riverwalk coming through. And, also another idea that we've had here is instead of, if you think about a traditional stadium around the country, to sort of become these sort of steel fortresses coming up out of the ground. Instead, what our objective is here is to actually excavate and put the field somewhere between 14 and 20 feet below the existing grade. And the objective there is that the concourse stays at the same level of the Riverwalk. And so when games aren't going on, that concourse becomes a jogging trail, becomes part of the fabric of the Riverwalk, so that it's not like you're sort of going into a stadium. Instead, the stadium opens out and it becomes this public asset for everyone. So it's a really, really exciting plan that we've been working on, and I'm thrilled to get a chance to show it to you. This is a kind of a revised rendering that our team came up with the new siding, and you can see the pattern shop is sort of illustrated in the lower left, the foundry building and the powerhouse, and then the Riverwalk illustrated, kind of creating that green space through the middle of the site. Another thing I think that's also important to mention is, what we've been doing for the past few months are the earnest master planning of the entire 120-acre site. And we've been working on siting the ballpark. And New City has also begun the process of spending architectural dollars on private sector investment as well. So the buildings in the background represent potentially a pretty significant multifamily project, as well as an office and sort of mixed use office retail structure as well. So we're excited, and our objective is to just continue to work on all of it in parallel at the same time. So with that, I'm happy to answer any
I've got
questions.
a couple of questions.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you show us on this drawing here where the power shop and pattern shop are located?
So the pattern shop, the photo I shared a second ago is the sort of orange yellow building kind of in the lower left. It has those two sort of cupola roofs.
Right. Okay, that's what I thought.
And then the powerhouse is the one that's immediately behind the flags. this sort of a light blue color. So what you can see is it's hard to see there, but
Okay.
we've half of the building, we've maintained the sort of ruined form of the building, but then open it out for views.
Okay.
And then the portion on the right, I can't wait to show y'all. It actually has like old, ingrained wood floors that,
Yeah.
I mean, no one does anymore. I mean, this is why I love adaptive reuse, because you see all these building types that no one ever would build today. And imagine that being like a ticket office and sort of the front entrance to the whole stadium. So,
And you said the pattern shop would be seating?
fan seating on the upper floor. It would likely include office space for the team. We don't. The short answer is we're still
Okay.
kind of figuring
Yeah, I
that out.
understand. Yeah.
But we're
That's cool.
yeah.
What is the capacity seating?
I might ask Jason for that. I think there'd be somewhere between 4,000 and 5,000 fixed seats. Is that right?
Yeah, the seating capacity on the more modern ballparks is a little bit more fluid than it is on, like at AT&T Field, we know exactly how many people we can fit because there are a certain number of fixed seats, and then you can measure those benches we have on the upper levels and say, okay, this is how many people we can fit there. The new ballparks, and it's the same thing for arenas, football stadiums, any of that, there's much more what I would describe as social seating. So they create a lot of these areas that don't have necessarily the same kind of fixed seats, but it's more fluid. There's also, if you look again here, you see this 360-degree concourse that runs around the ballpark. What we generally will have is some drink rails there and some, bar stools. We'll have some flexible seating. So for instance, in our ballpark in Columbia, South Carolina, as Jim said, we have a little bit over 5,000 of what you would think of as traditional baseball seats. So the ballpark sort of looks and feels full once you get over about 5,000 people in it. That being said, we've put nearly 10,000 people in various times because there are a lot of these flex spaces where people can stand or find an unreserved seat or things like that. So the idea is to make it so that it feels full at 5,000, but that it can accommodate 8, 9, maybe even 10,000, depending on how all that plays out.
So you may have to go back a few slides to answer this question, but at this point, where do you see parking?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So as part of the donation agreement, there would be a temporary easement over a much broader portion of the land. And so the partners, the owners of the land have agreed to essentially on a as needed basis, basically set aside the vacant portions of the land for surface parking. And then what we would do is, as developments come online, as we build structured parking, say to support an office building that has a complementary use, and those parking spaces could be used in evenings and weekends to support the ballpark. And so there would be a 1-for-1 exchange. So, if I'm making this up, but if a parking structure has 300 spaces, that then frees up some of that developable land so that there's a 1-for-1 replacement.
So is there any structure on here that at this point, I know that we're early in the game,
Sure.
that's dedicated an area that there might be a structure built?
So
For those 5,000 people?
So a stadium of this size, typically there are several different kind of parking scenarios. There's the major league requirements for players, coaches, and those kind of things. But then for fan parking, on a game night, we estimate that it's there's a need for approximately 2,500 vehicular parking spaces. And so we've done some preliminary studies that show how that many cars would fit on the site. And that's part of the idea with this ring road concept that we've come up with, to basically be able to get cars quickly in and out from that whole site. and then create walking, the Riverwalk effectively becomes the way that they would move from their cars into the stadium. But then the first project that we're planning, the private sector project that we're planning, with that office and multifamily, that would have structured parking as part of it that would be usable for the stadium. And so we're very, very early in figuring that out, but that's the general plan.
Thank you.
Jim, can you speak to New City's role in the entire development, and what are you guys doing to strategize around what's going to happen around the stadium?
So New City has three distinct roles, if that makes sense. One role is managing the master planning of the overall site, and that's where we work for Mr. Chase and his partners. Part of that role will entail coming up with a broad plan, really usage strategy for the entire 120 acres. So what we'll do is come up with, this part of the site is where we believe multifamily housing belongs. This is a good commercial site, residential, retail, hospitality, hotels, whatever that may be. And we're doing that right now. That would culminate in a rezoning effort, which we anticipate beginning in the coming months. And that will involve, planning, as we've shown you, the sort of public infrastructure aspects of it. And then, from there, after rezoning, that's when we would begin, specifically investing in certain specific opportunities. The second role is wearing our, day-to-day private sector development hat. And so a portion of these properties that we will be moving forward with will then turn and actually purchase property from the owners to begin vertical construction projects, which include, for instance, these we hope for, these two projects to kick off. And then the third role will be as a consultant to you, bringing our baseball stadium and construction experience to basically consult and help make sure that things stay on track from a budget and schedule perspective, and that the designers and yeah.
So New City will stick around like much further past the stadium, like as the.
Oh, absolutely, yes, yeah. No, our objective is to play a long-term role in the development.
Yeah, great.
I have a question in reference to the main entrance for pedestrians. What would it be on this drawing here?
So if I'll actually, the next slide I think will help. So if you look, they're sort of the two buildings that sort of are right in the Riverwalk. If you sort of go directly north, where the black hatched line jogs a bit, that's what we call the powerhouse, and that's where an obvious location for the public entrance would be.
Okay, and far as traffic, I know there's a new exit on Broad Street, and there's a lot of congestion already on Broad. So how will the cars come in to the park?
So the before I answer that question, what I would suggest is that as part of the effort that the architects will be doing coming up is a very sophisticated traffic study. We'll include a traffic impact analysis in the design. So this is just a very early concept to show that we're thinking about it, and I think we're encouraged about how everything can be organized in a way that will minimize that impact. But you can see, Broad Street obviously is the main sort of north-south thoroughfare, and then you have multiple east-west options between 25th and 28th. But then Chestnut Street becomes an important artery as well. Right now, it's not that, frankly, it's just because the site's so contained. But part of an early idea would be to create a new 29th Street to kind of link all those properties together from Sydney and Chestnut. So again, the idea, the analogy I like to use when we're talking about traffic is when you do a traffic impact analysis, the way to think about it is like, imagine having a bag of marbles and you put them on top of a master plan and you drop the marbles. And if they all go to one place, that's bad. That means that's congestion. But if you create sort of an infrastructure network where you drop those marbles and they sort of spread evenly throughout the site, that means it's been successful, if that makes sense. And so they use sophisticated computer algorithms to sort of drop marbles on a plate, and they study how that impact works. And so we think we're on the right track, but there will be months and months of study to make sure that we really get that right, and specifically where traffic signals need to go. And then you, of course, have a game day strategy that will involve, officers quickly moving people through and out. So,
Is there any idea about a parking garage?
that's exactly what we're talking about. So,
Okay.
We want to make sure that the stadium can be serviced without any private sector development at all. I mean, that's sort of the one side of the scenario, to make sure that there's not you have a city asset, a county asset that is somehow functionally difficult. But then the good news is that we would build at private sector cost, importantly, parking structures that would service the stadium. And as more development goes on, that footprint and the need for all that vast parking kind of shrinks down, and you can really just use everything around the stadium.
Okay.
We can talk about parking in Columbia.
Any more questions?
Do you have a ring road? It looks like you're going around 29th Street and 26th Street. Is that where the ring will go around the stadium? Is that what it looks like? And then Chestnut Street would also be motorists coming from that direction. And would that be the only three that would be roads coming into the area?
Again, so you've got 28th, 27th, Sydney, 26th, 25th, Chestnut, and again, I would say this is still super early,
Right?
But we've studied probably dozens of different permutations of this, and as part of bringing on the local architecture team, that will include the civil engineering and traffic study and really kind of perfecting this model. So.
Yes, sir. Just trying to figure out where emergency vehicles could get in. I deal with that a lot on
Yes,
that
sir.
end of it here, but it looks like Chestnut Street would be going into the area, and then 29th and 26th Street at least go all the way around the area. And then beyond that, you're talking about pedestrian travel along the Tennessee Riverwalk areas that would be going right next to the stadium.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And Jim, I had the opportunity, my wife and I, to go to the Atlanta Braves game
Oh, great.
Monday, and compared to the Braves Stadium, it seems like the game starts before you get in the stadium.
Yeah.
So what type of feel are you projecting for this facility?
That's exactly it. Obviously there are noticeable differences. My bias personally, I'll reveal that, is towards minor league experiences like this, because the scale is so much more intimate. The Battery, though, is a great example of how the Braves have really activated the area. So it's not just about baseball, but the Battery's obviously a very popular destination in Atlanta. year round. And games start hours and hours before, great restaurants, places to go see, as you mentioned, and then it kind of keeps going afterwards. And to me, the idea of the Riverwalk, the Foundry building, that, just activating this whole area to kind of create that kind of district feeling, that is exactly what we're intending to do. To create not just on game nights, but year-round place for people to hang out, come visit, work, live, and just a place that people can be really proud of.
Okay. That's it. That's it. Thank you. Thank you, Jim.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you. Really appreciate your time.
And, Jermaine,
Yes, sir.
I wanted to ask you, as far as the board members, where are we at as far as, are we gonna replace any members that we lost?
We do. So the city has been in communication with the county because, as you all know, that the two vacancies that need to be filled on the Sports Authority Board need to have confirmation and approval from both the city and the county. And so we have been in conversation, and we anticipate that we should have two board members that will meet with both the city's and county's approval within the next few weeks.
And do you have any other business to discuss with us?
I do not. That's all we have.
Thank you. With that being said, I make a motion that the meeting be adjourned.
Second.
Second. Meeting is adjourned.
Right from now, on, one of us.